Hello friends, welcome to HealthWiseAct, Medical Concept Simplified. In this video, we will learn about complicated malaria or severe malaria and its management in India as per the guidelines designed by National Vector-Borne Disease Control Program. Malaria is a vector-borne disease caused by one of the 6 species of Plasmodium named P. vivax, P. falciparum, 2 strains of P. ovale, P. malaria and P. knowlesi. It is transmitted in humans primarily through the bite of infected female Anopheles mosquito, but sometimes even blood transfusion or even organ transplantation may even transmit the infection. Malaria can either be complicated or uncomplicated. Uncomplicated malaria have low mortality rates, but recurrent infections and complicated malaria, if not treated timely, have high mortality rates. Friends, if you want to learn about uncomplicated malaria and its management, please click on the I button on the right top corner of the screen or click the link given in the description box below. Here, we will discuss about complicated malaria, which usually arises due to P. falciparum malaria. But even P. vivax and P. knowlesi infections are also known to cause severe malaria. Other causes include recurrent infections, partially treated infections, mixed infections, that is both P. vivax and P. falciparum at the same time, and delay in diagnosis and treatment of malaria. Pathophysiology and transmission of malaria follows sexual phase in mosquitoes and asexual phase in humans, which is discussed in the video of uncomplicated malaria and can be accessed through the link above. Coming on to the symptoms, along with the common symptoms manifested in simple malaria like fever, fatigue, arthralgia, myalgia, headache, nausea, vomiting, low-grade abdomen pain with associated diarrhea, and even chest pain. Patients with complicated malaria may present with MODS, that is multi-organ dysfunction syndrome, manifested through following signs, symptoms and pathological findings. This includes orthostatic hypotension or shock with systolic BP of less than 80 mm of mercury and capillary refill time of more than 3 seconds. Hypoglycemia with sugars less than 40 mg per deciliter due to failure of hepatic gluconeogenesis and increase in glucose consumption by the host. Metabolic acidosis with bicarbonate of less than 15 millimole per liter. Venous plasma lactate of more than 5 millimole per liter due to renal impairment with serum creatinine of more than 3. Breathlessness due to non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema with RR of more than 30 per minute and saturation of less than 92% with use of accessory muscles. Chest X-ray may show ARDS patterns, bleeding, DIC, hemoglobinuria. LFT may show evidence of hemolytic jaundice with serum bilirubin of more than 3. CBC shows severe anemia with HB less than 7 in adults or less than 5 in children with associated thrombocytopenia. Secondary infections may even manifest leukocytosis. Other findings also include raised infection markers like ESR and CRP and PCT. High parasitic load of more than 5% in blood smears. USG screening may show hepatosplenomegaly. CNS involvement or cerebral malaria may manifest with delirium, impaired consciousness with GCS less than 11 in adults or Blantyre score of less than 3 in children, coma, convulsions, more than 2 episodes, and even encephalopathy along with the high-grade fever. Apart from routine investigations, cerebral malaria patients may be benefited with CSF examination, which may reveal elevated protein and cell count levels. Usually, no residual CNS signs are seen post-recovery, but some patients may have residual signs in the form of hemiplegia, palsy, impaired cognition, cortical blindness, and even deafness. Diagnostic tools in severe malaria include all the above clinical signs and symptoms along with clear pathological evidence with thick and thin smear microscopy with GIMSA stain done by an experienced microscopist, which remains the gold standard for diagnosis. In conditions with low parasite density levels, diagnosis can be achieved through RT-PCR methods. Other methods include ELISA method screening, which are also very sensitive in diagnosing malaria, and P. falciparum histidine-rich protein 2 based rapid diagnostic kits or bivalent RDTs, which serve as a great tool in diagnosing severe malaria in areas where limited resources are available. But they may show positive results several weeks post-infection and also are not quantitative, hence lacks sensitivity and specificity. Now friends, let's have a look at the treatment part of severe malaria or complicated malaria. For severe malaria or complicated malaria, the recommended drug is either artemisinin based derivatives or quinine along with clindamycin or doxycycline. The recommended artemisinin derivatives are as follows. First is artesunate, which is very commonly used, which is given in a dose of 2.4 mg per kg body weight IV or IM at time 0, that is stat dose, followed by 12 hours, followed by 24 hours, and then OD for 4 days. Second derivative is artemether, which is given in a dose of 3.2 mg per kg body weight intramuscular stat, followed by 1.6 mg per kg body weight for 3 days. And third is RT-ether, which is given in a dose of 150 mg intramuscular for 3 days, but RT-ether is not indicated in children's. Next recommended drug is quinine, which is given in a dose of 20 mg quinine salt per kg body weight diluted in 5% dextrose given over 4 hours bolus, followed by maintenance dose of 10 mg per kg body weight TDS for 3 to 5 days or depending upon the severity of illness. While using quinine, some important points should be noted here are as follows. No loading dose of quinine of 20 mg per kg body weight should be given if patient has already received oral quinine. If quinine needs to be continued for more than 48 hours, then the dose should be reduced to 7 mg per kg body weight IV. While giving quinine, the infusion rate should not exceed more than 5 mg per kg per hour at any time. Regular blood sugar should be checked as quinine is prone to cause hypoglycemia. ECG should be checked regularly as quinine causes QT prolongation and may aggravate arrhythmias. Friends, if you want to know more about ECG basics and interpretation, then click on the I button on the right top corner of the screen or click the link given in the description box below. Doxycycline, if needed, should be given in a recommended dose of 100 mg twice a day for 7 days in adults. While doxycycline is contraindicated in pregnancy and children less than 8 years, another alternative is clindamycin, which can be given in a recommended dose of 10 mg per kg body weight twice a day for 7 days. While treating severe malaria or complicated malaria, some important points should be noted here are as follows. Parenteral therapy, once started, should be continued for at least 24 hours. Once the patient can tolerate oral therapy after 24 hours, then patient should be shifted to full dose of ACT based upon the region-specific doses. If the patient is suspected of cerebral malaria, then mefloquine, which is recommended in the ACT, should not be given as it may aggravate or cause neuropsychiatric complications. In first trimester of pregnancy, the recommended drug of choice is quinine only, whereas in second and third trimester, patient can receive ACT regimens also. If patient is not responding to one regimen, then the regimen should be shifted as early as possible. To sum up, parenteral based artemisinin derivatives along with doxycycline or clindamycin or quinine along with doxycycline or clindamycin proves to be very effective approach while treating severe malaria or complicated malaria in India. High-grade fever should be managed with tepid sponging or paracetamol in a dose of 10 to 15 mg per kg body weight. In cases of cerebral malaria, if patient is having convulsion, then midazolam or lorazepam is to be used along with anticonvulsants. Friends, if you want to know more about epilepsy or status epilepticus, then please click on the I button on the right top corner of the screen or click the link given in the description box below. Patients with renal failure should be treated with hemodialysis or renal replacement therapy. Paxil volume should be used if hemoglobin drops below 7 mg or hematocrit drops less than 20% of the base value. Acidosis should be corrected with intravenous sodium bicarbonate or in severe cases through hemodialysis or renal replacement therapy. Friends, if you want to know more about acid-base disorders or ABGs, then please click on the I button on the right top corner of the screen or click the link given in the description box below. Hypoglycemia should be managed through intravenous dextrose or infusion and frequent sugar monitoring should be done. Patients with ARDS or respiratory failure should be managed with NIV support, and if GCS fall, then patient should be intubated and put on mechanical ventilation support. Friends, if you want to know more about ventilator basics and modes of mechanical ventilation, please click on the I button on the right top corner of the screen or click the link given in the description box below. Bleeding issues due to deranged coagulation profile should be managed with fresh frozen plasma transfusion or platelet transfusion when needed. Shock or hypotension should be managed through inotropic supports given via central lines. In case of urgent requirement of interventional procedures in conditions of thrombocytopenia or deranged coagulation profile, they should always be performed under the cover of platelet or FFP transfusion to avoid the bleeding risk. In confirmed cases of DIC or disseminated intravascular coagulation, call should be taken up for use of anticoagulants, that is LMWH, by assessing the risk-benefit ratio, but the final decision should be taken up by the treating physician, intensivist or hematologist. In cases of superadded infection, broad-spectrum antibiotic should also be used along with antimalarials. Management of other comorbidities, that is hypertension, diabetes, hypothyroidism and other problems should go hand by hand while treating the primary malarial infections. So friends, this brings us to the end of this topic. Hope you find this information valuable and applicable in your clinical practice. Please do like and share this video and hit the bell icon for latest updates. And for more such informational videos on medical topics, please subscribe to YouTube channel Health Vizag, Medical Concept Simplified. Thank you.